never die.
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Looked like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Feel the shadows. I'll pop your redemption here just 1 second. Hold on. You were pulled out of class without warning. Given tests. World's confusion. How you doing? Given tests no one else took. Asked questions that didn't feel like school, and years later, thousands of people remember the same thing. But one of them can fully explain why, but none of them can fully explain why it felt so wrong. The G.A.T.E program was supposed to identify gifted children, but some former students believe they weren't being educated, they were being studied. And the question is, were they just kids with imagination, or part of something no one else was ever supposed to notice?
Tonight on Beyond the Shadows podcast, we are discussing the G.A.T.E program. That's right. Hello, friends. Worlds of Confusion, how you doing? Welcome in. We're going. We're live. We're freaking live.
Lip. Thanks for subscribing. Hello, everyone.
Blip, thank you so much for the sub. Jeez.
Dun do.
All right. Yeah. Worlds, you popped one of the Saturday. Oh, that's right. Wait. Saturday? Are you a day behind?
Hey, Blip.
I thought you were a day ahead. Or 12 hours ahead? Maybe you're 12. I don't know. There's so many different people in so many different time zones. It's hard to keep track. It really is. Yeah, Worlds of Confusion. You popped the new redemption.
Nope, I mean Sunday.
Oh, okay. You popped
Damn it.
You popped the new redemption. We've got a whole pile of new redemptions. I spent half of the night last night.
10 p.m. here.
10 p.m. Oh, geez. It is 5.
Hello.
It's 5 p.m. here. James Cappy, how's it going? Everybody's here tonight. I'm so glad everyone's here. Yes. If you haven't noticed, my esteemed co-host tonight, we'll get
Hazel doesn't look so good today.
Hazel is traveling. She's on the road right now, but we'll get to my co-host here in a second. Worlds of Confusion, you popped one of the new redemptions, but you did it during the intro and the overlay wasn't there. So let me go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and pop that for you. We've got a whole pile of new redemptions, a whole pile of them. I'm gonna show everybody. I want everybody to see all the new redemptions. We'll start off with the one that Worlds popped. Here we go. This one's called "Do You Believe?"
Do you believe in me? Because I believe in you.
You know we love Mothman on this show. We do. So we got Mothman saying, "Do you believe?" We also have, hold on, let me kill this music here. So we all know about the basal bass drop. So we do have a cat named Olive Oil. And we got a redemption for Olive Oil. I just finished it, not but 10 or 15 minutes ago. So we have, for your viewing pleasure, the Olive Oil drum and bass. Headphone warning, this does get a little bit loud, but this one's just as fun as the basal bass drop. So here we go.
Oh.
Here we go.
Surely you mean au revoir? No. Goodbye.
Olive oil drum and bass!
Olive oil, drum and bass, everybody. So there we go. The whole family's got a redemption. Now I got to make one for Hazel because, you know, she's awesome too, but I'm going to have to sneak one in there when she's not paying attention. I just got to figure out what to do. And just like I said last week, I was going to try to make a redemption so everybody can participate in saying paranormal or not paranormal. So now we have a redemption for both. So I'm going to go ahead and show both of those off. So first off, we have This Is Paranormal. Only costs 50 points. Anybody that's here for an hour will get that point. So here is number 3 of 4 of the new ones this week.
That is absolutely paranormal.
Easy peasy. And then we also have Not Paranormal.
That is absolutely not paranormal.
So those of you who are as old as I am might remember in the early 90s, there was a piece of software that Microsoft put out. Well, it wasn't Microsoft back then. It was just Windows. It was called Talk It. And so I've been playing with the Talk It thing, trying to like use it. I mean, it's a killer piece of software, right? Because you could just type anything you want and it comes out with these crazy voice patterns. It's a vocalizing piece of software. And so I used that for the paranormal, Not Paranormal. That's where we got the voice lines for Basil Bass Drop. And it is the voice engine for our wonderful co-host tonight, Jack. So I can do this, but it just takes a second. Everybody, this is my wonderful co-host for tonight, Jack. Everybody say hi to Jack. Everybody give a round of applause for Jack.
Hello world, my name is Jack.
Yes, this is Jack. Jack's mic is a little hot. Let me turn that down just a tiny bit. Give me that line one more time, Jack.
Hello world, my name is Jack.
There you go. This is Jack. Say hello, Jack, would you?
Hello.
Jack will be my co-host tonight, and I am looking forward to hearing all of these wonderful, amazing things that he's got to say. I tried to make this as engaging as possible, so I hope this is going to be fun. This is our...
Oh, I had a dream about you guys this week.
Oh, did...
Teleported into your living room.
Oh, really?
Hi, Jack.
Hello worlds.
I'm just curious. Go on, and I just want to see if you've got any telepathic powers. Describe my living room for me, and I'll tell you if you're accurate or not. That sounds like a really fun exercise.
I think I'm a bit delayed, sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. Totally fine. Yeah, you're a pretty good jump away from us. So I can imagine you're being delayed for sure. If Jack talking gets to be a little too annoying, just let me know. There's no easy way to make him talk. I had to pre-type a bunch of responses to some questions. So it'll take me a minute to copy and paste my responses. I have Notepad open next to this piece of wonderful 1990s software. Actually had to find it on the Wayback Machine. But, also another small update was last week I said I had a new camera coming.
Ooh, I was on a dark sofa.
A dark sofa. Oh, okay. Dark. What kind of dark color? Because I do have a dark colored couch. I'm just curious. I bet we were fun. I bet we were fun in your dream. Shout out to all my homebrewers tonight. I'm drinking some...
The dream living room was real empty, which I don't think is accurate.
Oh no, our living room is completely full of stuff. Ah, jeez. Well, that's okay. We do have a dark colored couch, but our living room is full of decorations. I have my massive camera collection in the living room, and then Hazel...
Like black or dark blue?
Ah, it's dark red. Man. Oh, well. That's okay. It was fun. It was a fun
and very lovely.
Hey, we are good hosts. We are good hosts. we also have Hazel's typewriter collection in the living room. And then we have our Bob's Burger Shrine in the living room. And I really think that's about it. I think so. So, if you noticed, the camera isn't freaking out. We get
I was
any...
anxious that I couldn't teleport back. I didn't have my passport.
Oh no, it's always funny how we have those crazy, like panic in the dreams, right? Like you have something or you don't have something that you're supposed to or you're not supposed to. And the panic is visceral, like absolutely visceral. Yeah, it's wild. Dreams are just absolutely bizarre. I studied lucid dreaming for a good number of years. I'm very interested. The security of the Astral Airport is a nightmare. I'm very interested in lucid dreaming. There's so they're about to release. Why did speech chat stop? Why did speech chat stop? Don't do this to me, speech chat. Refresh.
Testing.
There we go. Speech chat's back.
New camera. You look a lot brighter in there.
Yes, so this camera is a fraction of the GoPro. So I've been using the new GoPro for my webcam. It works great in bright light, but in low light settings, it doesn't work so well. That's why we were getting the glitching. I tried everything I could to make this GoPro work because this damn thing was like $400, and the camera that I'm using now was $53. It's crazy that the cheaper one works a lot better. I did a little bit of research, and this brand does really, really good in low light, and so it's set for low light right now, which is usually moderately dark in here, but we do have a little bit of sunlight coming through one of the windows right now. But I'm going to try and keep the light levels up a little bit and play with it a little bit, see what happens, see what works, see what doesn't. There will be some video changes here and there, but I'm going to do my best. The big thing is we're not glitching anymore, and when I move, we don't get heavy pixelation around my head. So... new camera, $53. I'm really, really impressed. For the price, I'm really impressed. So we will be switching all of the cameras probably to this brand because it seems to be working really well. So yeah, I'm very, very happy that this camera seems to be working. I spent most of the night last night playing with it, trying to get the camera, to be clear. Trying to get the settings just right. There's a whole piece of software I had to go into, and unlike the GoPro, this one has such a large sensor that I'm able to go in and actually change the exposure settings. So it's moderately dark in here, but it's set to low light settings, and the sensor is just gobbling up all this light. And it runs at pretty decent frame rate. We're doing 1080p at 100 FPS right now, so... Check out that. Check out this no pixelation business going on here. Anyway, I'm so glad everybody's here tonight. I had a joy researching this week's subject. We're going to be talking about the GATE program, of course. This is going to be an interesting case, to say the least. Because I do have a little bit of personal background with this, because I do remember the GATE program, and I do remember it being in my school. Stargate, not Stargate, not to be confused with Stargate. This is GATE, the G.A.T.E. It's an abbreviation for the Gifted and Talented Education, something like that. We'll get into what it stands for later, but it may or may not be a secret government program. I will say.
Never heard of it. Nice.
Ooh, okay, cool. So this will kind of set a nice little bar for delineation between American schools and schools overseas, because I know you're overseas. I was able to talk with Hefner at length about it last night because we went to the same elementary school, and I was curious if he remembered any of the things that I remembered. We'll get into that just here in a little bit. But I'm so glad everybody's here tonight. I'm glad my co-host is here tonight. I'm sure you all are loving his wonderful hat this evening. I will likely be wearing that sometime tonight because this case is wild. We are full-blown government conspiracy. Puppy Chat is here, everybody. Sorry to call you out, Puppy. I saw you in there. I get excited. I get excited when people I know come in. But yeah, we're going to have some fun tonight. We're going to try to anyway. I've got some of my homebrew mead. I'm halfway through one jar of mead tonight, and we're going to crack.
Quiet, I might have fallen asleep.
Oh, no big deal. Hey, we're glad you're just here. You don't have to apologize to me, but you might have to apologize to Jack. Let me type up a snarky response.
Thank you in advance for the comoni.
Oh my gosh, I can't type.
Jack won't have bones about it.
Yes, do not fall asleep. I will haunt your dreams.
Yeah, it's not a wonderful... it's not the best vocalizing piece of software. This came out in 1990.
Sorry in advance, Jack. It's just because your presence is so soothing.
Thank you.
At Worlds of Confusion, I may or may not have fallen asleep during Bob Lazar Part 1. Lols, puppy.
I don't understand sleep.
Yeah, Jack doesn't get sleep because he doesn't have to. So Jack's a little different.
There won't be a bone to pick. I'm sure Jack understands the human need to sleep.
It's funny because I just watched I just watched Project Hail Mary today. Like I started watching it last night, but I was 3/4 in the bag, and I was like, I got to get some sleep. And finished watching it this morning, and it's a big thing about sleep in that movie. Like, you gotta sleep is the thing. You should go watch Project Hail Mary. Fantastic science fiction movie. It is this year's Interstellar. Put it on your viewing list. You got to see it. It's fantastic. Great. I will say, for a new science fiction movie, they did a fantastic job coming up with an original extraterrestrial. Absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed the entire show. Puppy Chat, I'm so glad you're here. I haven't talked to you in so long. How you doing, Puppy? Round of applause for Puppy Chat. All right. Well, kids, you ready to get into it? You ready to hear all these wonderful and witty responses that I've pre-typed for Jack over here? See how long it takes me to copy and paste?
I stayed up late for the first time in ages last night.
So did I.
Today was a write-off.
I stayed up last night hanging out in Hefner's stream, and we talked shit about my dad. We talked shit about my dad, and then we talked about...
Wu-Ye, tell us about brainwashing children.
Okay, cool. We're going to talk about brainwashing children. But yeah, we hung out with Hefner last night until probably 11:30 or so. Had some fun doing that. It was fun. I'm trying my best to be more active in his streams because he's one of my besties. Well, all right. Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of Beyond the Shadows podcast. Tonight, we are discussing the G.A.T.E program. Gifted kids or a government experiment nobody talks about. Oh, hold on. For it, I got to get Jack's response ready. It takes a second. Welcome, everybody. I'm Victus.
And I am Jack.
And we are your personal, professional paranormal investigators. And welcome to the greatest paranormal podcast in the world, as long as you don't fact check it. This is Beyond the Shadows podcast, where we record a live paranormal podcast, one take, no edits, and try to figure out if this week's case is truly paranormal or just bullshit. Jack, how are you doing this week? Oh, hold on. Should have had this one copied already.
I'm doing good and I'm very happy to be here on the podcast tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate you making that great comment. You are absolutely amazing, and I appreciate you being here. Do you have anything specific that you wanted to say to the viewers tonight? Anything at all?
You are the best podcaster ever.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate that. Round of applause for Jack, everybody. Round of applause for this very antiquated piece of software I'm using. We're going to have some fun tonight. Oh my gosh.
I fact-checked it against my personal opinion and it checks out.
Awesome. Good to know that it Google checks just fine. Because I was a little worried. All right. So thank you so much, Worlds of Confusion. Thanks, Blit, for being here tonight. Thanks, Worlds. Thanks, Puppy Chad. You guys are the best. I appreciate all of you being here. Let me clear out Jack's voice box here. Before we get into this week's episode, it is time for this week's news and paranormal. Oh, wait, I can have Jack read this part. Because I don't want him to read a bunch of the stuff. So take it away, Jack.
It is time for This Week in Paranormal, where we break down the strangest headlines from around the world and try to figure out what is real and what is just getting clicks.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate that. Let's get into this week's news in paranormal. So first and foremost, Chris Bledsoe's Easter prediction sparks debate. Claims surrounding Chris Bledsoe resurfaced after his prediction that a major extraterrestrial-related event would occur around Easter. While nothing definitive happened, believers argue that disclosure doesn't always mean something obvious or immediate. Skeptics, on the other hand, say it's just a vague prophecy that can be retroactively interpreted to fit anything. The debate continues to highlight how expectation shapes perception in the UFO community. And next up, government officials allegedly claimed teleportation event. We covered this a little bit last week, but a bizarre story made rounds involving...
Speech really has come a long way, hasn't it?
It has. I'm telling you. This was like hot shit in 1990, and I think it was like $100 piece of software. I will say there are a bunch of settings on it that I'm really impressed. A bizarre story made rounds online involving a supposed government-affiliated individual claiming he experienced teleportation, ending up inside a Waffle House with no memory of how he got there. The claim hasn't been verified, and details are inconsistent, but it gained traction due to its connection to long-standing theories about secret teleportation tech. Whether it's confusion, fabrication, or something stranger, people are definitely paying attention. And UFO sightings surge again in 2026. Reports of identified aerial phenomena have seen another spike, particularly across rural areas in the United States. While many are being attributed to drones or atmospheric condition, a small percentage remain unexplained. Some researchers argue that what we're seeing is better reported. We're seeing better reporting tools, not more UFOs, while others believe this is part of a slow, ongoing disclosure process. And last but not least, AI ghost voices trending on social media. A new trend has people using AI tools to isolate supposed ghost voices in old recordings. While most experts say it's just pattern recognition and audio manipulation, some users claim the voices are too consistent to ignore. It's raising new questions about whether technology is helping us uncover phenomena or not, or just creating illusions. And those are this week's paranormal headlines. Some intriguing, some questionable, all worth keeping an eye on. But tonight's story might hit closer to home than any of these. So that was this week's news and paranormal. I'm so glad everybody's here tonight. I'm getting Jack ready for this next part. Yep, I need this line, copy, paste. All right. So we've come to everybody's favorite part of the podcast, and that is, what shirt are you wearing today? Usually I have a snarky little phone call that I've made, but when it comes to the GATE program, I couldn't just call somebody, because this may or may not be a secret government program. So I did try to make some phone calls. And as soon as I said the words GATE program into my phone, I heard 3 clicks. The telltale sign of a line tap. And I said, hey, if you're monitoring my phone call, do you have anything you need to say about the GATE program? And they click, 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 click. And a scratchy voice came from the other end of the line. And they said, what shirt are you wearing today? We're trying to have fun. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to have some fun here. All right, so first and foremost, I'm going to show off my shirt, and then we'll get to Jack.
You just made me realize I've been wearing the same pajamas since last Sunday.
Nothing wrong with that. I do the same thing. This shirt that I'm wearing now, I will wear after work every day until the weekend. And then I switch. I do like a shower and change my pajamas for the week on the Sunday, because I'm sleeping in them. Not like I'm getting them dirty. No shame. No shame at all. Do the same thing. Totally fine. I was still wearing my hide and seek championship shirt until today, so. But I'm wearing one of my favorite shirts tonight. I know I say this all the time, but this one's true. So I am, back in the 90s, I was a big anime fan. And I was really particular about the type of anime that I watched. I didn't care for like the hypersexual stuff. The violent stuff was cool. You know, I watched a lot of like assassination stuff going on. But I did come across this cartoon by pure accident. Both of my parents worked very early in the morning, and when they couldn't afford to, hire somebody to watch me in the morning before school, they would send me to my aunt's house. So my aunt was the only person in my family that had good cable. And they would drop me off at like 4:30 in the morning. And 4:30 in the morning, there's not much on TV, but if you flip the Cartoon Network at 4:30 in the morning,
the best days are the days you don't have to get out your pajamas at all.
That is absolutely right. One of the best cartoons I've ever came across, an anime from the 90s, came on at like 5:30 in the morning. And it was called Samurai Pizza Cats. And Hazel found this shirt for me and gave it to me. It was either my birthday or Christmas, I forget. But check out this badass shirt. Yes, right? Right? Love me some Samurai Pizza Cats. I love Samurai Pizza Cats. I have all of the seasons, all of the episodes on the server. I watch them all the time. I watched some today. They're just cats that run a pizza parlor in futuristic Tokyo, but they are also samurai, and they fight off bad guys. But they have like little mech suits, and yeah, it's really fun. You get bored sometime, check out Samurai Pizza Cats on YouTube. You might like it. It's a thing from my childhood, but damn it, it's one of my favorites. I really love Samurai Pizza Cats. I've been a fan since the first episode that I saw, and I will continue to be a fan. And I love, every now and again, somebody will comment on the shirt, hey, it's a cool shirt. I really like that shirt. And makes me realize, I wasn't the only one that was watching it. What about you, Jack? What shirt are you wearing tonight?
I cannot participate because I'm not wearing a shirt.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for your comments, though, Jack. I appreciate that. Poor Jack. He's naked all the time. I bet he's freezing. All right. Well, thanks, Jack. I appreciate your Appreciate your little comments. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. I'm so excited that everybody showed up. I lost my flow for doing this by myself. Yeesh. I need my wife here. I'm lost without my wife. Jeez. All right. Well, before we get into the GATE program, Worlds, we heard from you about, you haven't really heard about the GATE program. I'm curious. I think that was you, Worlds. I'm sorry. Pretty sure. I'm trying to scroll. It's giving me a hard time about scrolling. But for those of you, everybody else that's here, you're welcome to chime in. I'd like to hear what everybody else knows about the GATE program, kind of set a baseline. I didn't know a whole lot about it at first, but the deeper I dove into the story, the more some of the memories from my childhood started to reconnect. And I think there was something to it. I'm just not sure what it was. But that's part of what we're going to investigate tonight. And, we got a good investigation tonight. I can't really provide any real photographic evidence tonight because there are no photos of this. This is it's essentially a conspiracy theory. But I can give you firsthand descriptions because I remember this from when I was a child. And later on, we'll get into some of the details that I found and some of the information that I got back from Hef because we went to the same elementary school. And that was when, that was when the GATE program was really taken into effect, was during elementary school. What am I seeing on the wall over there?
I know very little details, but it's supposedly a cover to test kids for psychic ability and then funnel them into black programs.
Right. It's exactly right. Yeah, it's interesting. And when I read about new conspiracy theories, so I say new conspiracy theories, this is not a new one, this is an older one. But when I read about conspiracy theories, I usually just Google search and, I'll watch, 15, 20 short videos before I decide, this is worth talking about or not. And the more the videos I watched, the more I realized that I may or may not have been a participant in this program because I do remember some of these things. So, Jack, do you know anything about the GATE program at all? Is there anything that you can add? What is your baseline for the information for tonight's case?
I don't know much about the GATE program. I was never in school.
Okay. Yeah, because you're 147 years old, right?
I'm actually 145.
Okay, sorry about that. But still, so you didn't really have much to do with the GATE program at all, because that wasn't really it wasn't really a thing 145 years ago.
No.
Yeah, so yeah, you didn't really have anything to do with that. That's fine. Well, we're still going to bounce some of this information off of you tonight, see what you think. So yeah, we're going to dive into this thing. We're going to dive into this bad boy. But first, I'm going to polish off this little glass that I have here. All right, we'll set that over to the side. Well, I think we have 2 weeks before we get into it. I do want to say we have about 2 weeks before our 100th episode, so get ready for that. We are going to recap episode 1 and look at some new evidence and go over it with some fresh eyes.
Bestviewersupcrowd.ru.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Jack, will you boo that bot?
Boo.
Thank you. Wow, it's a Russian website too. Yeah, get out of here. Nobody wants your viewers. We're not paying for anything. Boo, boo, bot, boo. All right, well, let's dive into it. We're going to jump off into Act 1, everybody. Act 1, the official story. This is Season 3, Episode 18 of Beyond the Shadows podcast. G.A.T.E. Gifted Kids.
Yo, I'm still mourning but chucking a lurk.
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks, Bonnie. Appreciate you being here. Glad you're here. We miss you. We miss you. We do. So yeah, this is hold on, let me get the official name here. It's so long that I haven't so this is Season 3, Episode 18, Beyond the Shadows podcast, G.A.T.E. Gifted Kids, or a Government Experiment No One Talks About. This is Act 1, everybody. Act 1. To understand why the G.A.T.E. program has become the center of so many conspiracy theories, you have to start with what it actually is. On paper, in policy, and in practice, because the official version of the story is not mysterious at all. G.A.T.E., which stands for Gifted and Talented Education, began gaining traction in the United States in the early 1970s. At the time, there was a growing concern that public schools were doing a decent job supporting struggling students, but completely overlooking those who were academically advanced. The idea was simple. If some students needed extra help to keep up, others might need additional challenges to stay engaged. And that led to federal attention. In 1972, a major report known as the Marland Report formally recognized gifted students as a group with specific educational needs. This wasn't fringe thinking, it was government-backed, research-driven, and widely accepted in academic circles. Schools began implementing specialized programs designed to identify high-performing students and give them access to more advanced material, creative problem-solving exercises, and accelerated learning tracks. That's where G.A.T.E. comes in. Depending on the district, the process usually started with testing, standardized assessments, IQ tests, teacher recommendations, and sometimes behavioral evaluations were used to determine whether a student qualified. The criteria varied. Some schools focused heavily on IQ scores, while others looked at creativity, leadership potential, or academic performance across multiple subjects. But once you were in, things changed. Oh my gosh, what did I do? Students selected for the G.A.T.E. program were often pulled out of their regular classrooms for part of the day or a week. Instead of standard lessons, they might work on logic puzzles, given advanced math, creative writing, independent research projects, or group problem-solving activities designed to push their thinking beyond grade level. In theory, it was a good thing. Parents saw it as opportunity, but teachers saw it as necessary. Schools saw it as progress. And for a lot of kids, it worked exactly as intended. There are plenty of former G.A.T.E. students who look back on the experience as one of the best parts of their education. Smaller class sizes, more engaging material, teachers who encouraged curiosity instead of memorization. It gave them space to think differently. Some credit it with setting them on paths toward careers in science, technology, and writing and research. So on the surface, there's nothing unusual here. No secret funding, no classified agenda, no hidden objectives, just educational program designed to challenge high-performing students. But here's where things get a little more complicated. Because the way G.A.T.E. was implemented wasn't always consistent. There was no single national standard, and each state and often each individual school district had control over how the program operated. That meant the testing methods and curriculum, and even the environments students were placed in, could vary wildly depending on where you lived. In one district, G.A.T.E. might look like advanced reading groups or science projects, but in another, it might involve isolated classrooms, unusual testing environments, or exercises that didn't feel like typical schoolwork at all. And that inconsistency matters, because when people start comparing experiences years later, they're not always talking about the same thing. Some students remembered structured academic enrichment, others remembered being taken out of class with little explanation, placed in unfamiliar rooms and given tasks that didn't seem to have clear answers. Again, that doesn't automatically mean anything was wrong. Education experiments, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, weren't uncommon. Schools were constantly trying new teaching methods, new evaluation tools, new ways to measure intelligence beyond simple test scores, and a lot of these approaches would seem strange today, but at the time they were considered innovative. And most of it was completely transparent, documented, reviewed, approved, but not always understood, especially by the students going through it. Think about it from a kid's perspective. You're 8, maybe 10 years old. One day you're told to leave your normal class, no real explanation. You're brought somewhere else, maybe a different room, maybe a different building. You're given puzzles, strange questions, abstract problems that don't feel like anything you've done before. There's no clear grading system, no obvious right or wrong answers, and no one really explains why you're there. From an adult perspective, that's cognitive testing or enrichment. But from a child's perspective, it can feel like something else entirely. And that gap between intention and perception is where the story starts to shift. Because decades later, when those kids grow up and start talking about their experiences, they're not just remembering worksheets and group projects. They're remembering how it felt. Confusing, isolating, sometimes even unsettling. And here's the part that gets people's attention. They're not remembering it alone. Thousands of former G.A.T.E students across different states and different time periods excuse me, have started sharing their stories online. And while the details vary, certain themes show up again and again. Being separated from peers, being given tests that didn't make sense, feeling like they were being observed or evaluated in ways that they didn't understand. Now, to be clear, none of that proves anything beyond the fact that the program could feel strange depending on how it was run, but it does raise a question. If this was just an educational program, why do so many people remember it as something more? And that's where we're going next, because once you move past the official story, you start getting into the part that doesn't show up in school records or policy documents. But that part lives in memory. And that's where things start to get weird. All right. What an introduction. What an absolutely fantastic way to start out Act 1. That is a lot, but we're really setting the par for what we're going through, or what we're going to go through for the investigation tonight. Excuse me. I'm slightly parched. I'm trying not to get hiccups. I've been nursing that one jar of mead, but damn it, it's strong. So, all right. Any of this sounding familiar? Anybody yet? Is it starting to ring a bell? I mean, this is, I think we're really kind of catering to American listeners tonight because this was a specific, I believe, a specific United States government program. I'm curious if anybody, towards the end of the investigation, if anybody listening overseas dealt with anything similar to this. Because then that would lend to a little bit of authenticity and a little bit of evidence to prove that other governments outside the United States were doing the same things. Oh, geez, the hiccups are here. Oh, no. Every time I got to clear my throat a bunch. It's always during the podcast. Always. I hardly ever get hiccups, only during the podcast. So yeah, this is we're setting a baseline. What we're doing is there is an actual government program called G.A.T.E, and you can find their website. It's out there. I looked at it a little bit today. I was trying to like pull some images, some graphics from the actual G.A.T.E program to see if there is something worth showing. And really, there's not. I mean, we have like the official logo from the government, but it seems to have changed like a dozen times in as many years. So there's the inconsistency is a little strange. But we do have actual evidence to prove that this was an actual United States government program called G.A.T.E.
I mean, I had a couple of assessments and health checks while I was at school that everyone got, but nothing that stood out as unusual.
Right, yeah. So I will say this. This was another thing. I don't think it particularly aligns with G.A.T.E, but like elementary school, it's like age or grades like kindergarten through like 6th grade, something like that. I think something like that. I remember them checking for lice a lot, like all the time. But like today, you don't hear about schools checking for lice ever. Like ever since I got out of elementary school, I don't remember hearing about anybody checking for lice ever again. I don't know. It's a little weird. The personal bubble violations were crazy back then. You know, I'm 40 years old, so you do the math. If you're about the same age, you're probably around, school around the same time I was. But there were a lot of like you said, Blip, assessments and health checks in my elementary school. But it seemed like after we moved on, the assessments and health checks just stopped. Right? It seems a little weird. But it just proposes a question like, what were they fishing for? I don't know. It's very strange. It's very strange indeed. Again, I see we've got a few people in YouTube land. Y'all are welcome to chime up and chat. Speech chat is active for YouTube. Y'all are welcome to jump in and say what you need to say. I would love to hear what other people have to say about some of this stuff. So feel free to chime in. I'm on the fence right now. I'm still kind of weighing what I remember as opposed to what I'm reading for evidence tonight. And, I'm still balancing what I remember as opposed to like what Hefner remembers, because we went to the same school. But maybe this is a piece of evidence because, I was given a different test than he was, I think. We'll get into that here in a little bit. Jack, what are you thinking about the G.A.T.E program so far?
That's interesting. I am not quite sure what to make of the case yet.
Okay. Well, keep your mind open, and we'll keep bouncing stuff off of you tonight, because we know they weren't testing for the G.A.T.E program 145 years ago, so 143. I forget exactly what he said. Anywhoots. Interesting indeed. Are y'all ready to get into Act 2? Act 2? This is Act 2, the shared memories. We're going to start getting into the phenomena of all these people sharing memories of interacting with officials from the G.A.T.E program and finding consistencies in between them. So yeah, let's dive off into this. Don't, get your tinfoil hats ready, because I think Act 3 is the big one that everybody kind of gets a little crazy about. Hold on just a second. I just got motion at the front door. I got to check it right quick. I actually had the cops come and knock on my door today. He was like, "What? Is everything okay in your house?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Well, somebody called 911 and said there was a domestic disturbance. But we couldn't tell if it was 13 or 15 on this street. And I said, well, no, it's not here. I said, we're quiet and boring. He said, well, have you heard anything? I said, no, I was upstairs with my headphones on, working at the desk. I didn't see anything, man. He's like, okay, well, thanks for your time. So now every time I get motion at the front door on my phone, I'm just like, oh, geez, he's back. Okay, well, let's get into Act 2, everybody. Act 2, the shared memories. This is Act 2. So if Act 1 is the version of G.A.T.E you'll find in textbooks and policy reports, Act 2 is the version you find when you start listening to the people who actually went through it. Because once you step outside of official documentation, the story changes. Not dramatically at first, but enough to make you pause. Over the last several years, especially with the rise of platforms like Reddit, TikTok, and long-form YouTube discussions, thousands of former G.A.T.E students have started comparing experiences. Many of them hadn't thought about the program in years, decades even, until they saw someone else describing something that felt familiar. And that's where things started to get interesting, because these aren't people from the same school. They're not even from the same state. Different decades, different districts, different teachers. But when they talk about what they remember, certain details line up a little bit too cleanly. One of the most common things brought up is how they were pulled from class. Not occasionally, not casually, but in a way that felt deliberate. Students described being called out unexpectedly, sometimes mid-lesson, sometimes without any real explanation. No, quote, you're going to advanced math, or, quote, you've been selected for enrichment, just come with us. And for a kid, that sticks. Once they were out of the classroom, things didn't always feel like school anymore. A lot of former students talk about being placed in separate rooms, sometimes normal classrooms, sometimes spaces that didn't quite match the rest of the school. Basements come up a lot. Portable classrooms, rooms with minimal decorations, different lighting, or setups that felt more clinical than educational. Now and again, that doesn't automatically mean anything unusual was happening, but schools use whatever space they have. It's not just the location people remember, it's what's inside. But then there's the tests, right? The word comes up constantly, but when people describe them, they don't sound like tests in the traditional sense. They weren't multiple choice, they weren't timed math problems. Instead, students described abstract pattern recognition tasks, puzzles with no clear instructions, questions that didn't seem to have a right answer, being asked to, quote, think about things rather than solve them. Some even recall being shown images or symbols and asked what they meant, or how they made them feel. And here's where the tone shifts, because a lot of people say they didn't understand what they were being evaluated on. Not just this is hard, but this doesn't feel like school. And then there's the feeling of observation. This is one of the most common, consistent themes, and also one of the easiest to explain, and the hardest to ignore. Students describe adults watching closely, sometimes silently, being monitored more than taught, and a sense that their reactions mattered more than their answers. Now, from an educational standpoint, that could just be behavioral observation, something used in psychology and cognitive assessments, but totally normal in that context. But when you're a kid, it doesn't feel normal. It feels like you're being studied. Another pattern that comes up a lot is isolation, not in a dramatic, locked in a room kind of way, but socially. G.A.T.E students were often separated from their peers, not just during sessions, but sometimes in ways that made them feel different, but socially labeled, othered. Some describe being told they were special without any real understanding what that meant. Others say they avoided talking about the program entirely because no one else seemed to have the same experience. And that disconnect, it sticks with people. But now here's where things start to get really interesting, because if it were just a handful of stories, you could write it off pretty easily. Different schools, different teaching styles, different childhood interpretations. But it's not a handful, it's a pattern. And when people start comparing notes, you see recurring elements. Being removed from class without explanation, being placed in unfamiliar environments, participating in tests that didn't feel academic, feeling observed rather than taught, leaving with the sense that something about it was off. Not traumatic, not overtly negative, just unsettling. And to be clear, we're still not in the conspiracy territory yet. Everything we described so far can be explained through normal education practices, especially considering the time period. The 70s through the 90s saw a lot of experimentation in how intelligence was measured, and educators were moving beyond simple memorization and trying to understand how kids think, not just what they know. And that means open-ended problem solving, psychological style assessments, behavioral observation, creative cognitive exercises. All of that fits. But here's the problem. Because people who went through GATE don't remember it that way. They don't remember innovative education. They don't remember simplicity. They remember confusion. They remember a lack of explanation. And more importantly, they remember a feeling they still can't quite define. And when enough people share that same feeling, it starts to take on a life of its own. Because once you have a pattern, even a loose one, people start looking for explanations. And that's where things shift from shared memory into something else entirely. Because the moment you ask, why do so many people remember it this way? You open the door to a different kind of answer. One that doesn't come from school records or education policy or official explanations. It comes from theory. And in this case, some of those theories go a lot further than you'd expect. So next up in Act 3, and this is where we stop asking what GATE was and start looking at what some people believe it actually wasn't supposed to be. So that was a lot. That was a lot to take in. I know it was. Again, if anybody listening has some input on what they think they believe was the GATE program growing up, I would love to hear it. If you're listening to this at a later date, we are live every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are not watching it live and you're listening to this during the week or what have you, if you had an experience with the GATE program, please, by all means, comment. You can email us at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd like to hear some real world experiences other than my own. I feel like this has some footing, some foundation so far. I'm going to touch a little bit on my experience. But before I do that, I want to actually pull up a picture of my elementary school on Google Maps. I don't even know if it's still there. Because I feel like where we were tested was really strange. Oh, it is still there. Wait. This looks different now. Oh, geez. How do you rotate with a mouse and keyboard? don't remember it being quite like this. Okay. Yeah. I do remember. Okay, so I'm starting to remember a lot of this now. Yeah. Well, they got rid of all the... So my school had all the... my elementary school had the wooden playground where it was all wood. All wood, and they were rocks. They don't do that today anymore. They don't do any of that anymore. There was... It always seemed a little weird to me that, like, the gym was connected by a narrow hallway. And I remember there were, like, people talking about, like, other students were talking about, there's somebody here to do, like, some weird testing. I don't remember exactly what was said, but I do remember them saying there's some strange testing going on, and they're calling special people out of class to take this test. And, you know, I grew up in kind of a shitty household growing up, but I was like, yeah, they're not going to call me because, you know, nothing special about me. But they ended up calling me out. But what they did was they, over the PA in the school, they called off a list of names. And let me shift over to Google Maps and show you my elementary school here. So this is my elementary school. This is where I went to elementary school at. It didn't used to look like this. This actually used to be like a baseball field. Like they've got a football field here now. What are elementary school kids playing football for? Anyway, this part of the building is classrooms. Classrooms on both sides, and then one hallway right down the middle. And this is like the lobby. There's like offices here. I don't know what this building is, but I do remember it being there. I feel like it was like storage for like school equipment, question mark. But this lobby, if you go in the back corner, there's a hallway right here, and it stretches all the way back, and this is the gym. And I always thought it was weird that you had to go through this long, narrow hallway to get to the gym. Oh no, this was the auditoriums. So there was two auditoriums. There was one here and one here. I remember it now. Yeah, this goes way back. Jeez. It was like a stage in there, 2 stages, and then it had like a retractable wall to divide it in half, make 2 auditoriums. But when they called our names over the PA, we were all brought out of class. And so this is a 2-story building, if I remember correctly. Can I go to Street View on this? Yeah, 2-story building. Yeah, see, it's the auditorium there. We were called out of class, and I remember they read off like 15 or 20 names over the PA. And the people that were called out, it was like we all felt like we were in trouble. Because it was really weird. They said, well, they read off the names and they're like, report to the gym. So we all go to the gym, but they stopped us in the hallway leading to the gym. So this long hallway right here, it doesn't look like much, but when you're like single digits, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, this is a long hallway. So I remember they brought us all down, and we came down through the hallway to the back side of the gym and into the gym, and then they had us form a single file line leading back down the hallway. It was really weird. So we went in, circled around, and then came back out, which is really just really strange to me. I've done so much like deep diving in my brain about this last couple weeks. Just thinking about this because it's really weird. So Hef doesn't remember this at all. I don't believe that his name was called. He wasn't brought out to do this, but I was. My name was called, and I remember being out here. And I remember it's weird that I remember this detail, but I specifically remember it looking strange that the adults had a briefcase on a child-sized desk. And they had the briefcase flipped open so they can see what's inside it, but I could not. And I remember the briefcase looking gigantic because it was a child-sized desk. I know that. I know that today. But I mean, you know, the school only got what it's got, right? They're not going to have adult-sized desks in an elementary school, right? But I remember standing in line and like they were like, "No talking. Don't talk to the people behind you. We don't want any noises at all. Everybody has to be silent." And so like we were like standing single file, like military procession, single file, like keep your hands. They kept saying, put your hands at your sides. And like, they want you like, put your hands like this at your sides. And so we were like dead straight and we were all scared because we all thought we were in trouble. Didn't know what the hell was going on.
Of confusion.
We didn't know what the hell was going on. It was really strange, really, really strange. But I remember the posture thing, like they said, hands like this, like they said specifically, we want your hands like this, straight at your sides. We want your palms on your legs. So you're not playing with anybody. You're not joking around. This is serious. We need everybody's full attention. We want everybody to sit still and be silent. And I remember it being like military because both of my parents were military. And I was like, this seems military to me. Like they want us to stand at attention and silent in a single file line. But we'll get into more about what else I saw after we go through Act 3. Because Act 3 dives into some of the theories and things that people saw, recurring themes, recurring concepts and ideas of well, not concepts, but things that people remembered. And it's really hard for me to vocalize exactly what's going on because I've been through some of this. Yeah, it's just really wild. We're gonna have a lot of fun here in Act 3 because there is a lot of evidence. I say evidence, but this is like firsthand account theories of things that people believe that they went through.
I need to use the bathroom.
Okay. So Jack needs to use the bathroom. I also need to use the bathroom. We're going to take a quick little bathroom break, and we're going to come back. So don't go anywhere, folks, because Act 3, we're going to get into the theories. So hold what you got, folks. Let's check this bad boy out. There are limits to what the public is allowed to know, and that those limits are enforced not by accident, but by design. And what makes Roswell different from thousands of other unexplained sightings is not the debris, it's not the alleged bodies, it's the paper trail. How many times have we seen a traditional, illustration or depiction of an alien abduction, and there's always some type of craft, a beam of light comes down. Think of the scene from Fire in the Sky. Everybody's seen Fire in the Sky. Dude is cool. He's standing underneath the UFO. He gets blasted with the beam of light. He gets thrown back. He's paralyzed, and they suck him up with the beam of light. I can't tell you where this originates from. Search and rescue teams sometimes describe similar behavior in missing person cases near lakes and rivers. The individual is found in water that appears calm and shallow at the edge. No sign of a struggle on the bank, no defensive injuries, no evidence of a third party, just entry. Brazel initially gathered some of the material and took it back to his house. He showed it to his children. They tried to burn it. They tried to cut it. They tried to bend it. It wouldn't cooperate. Some of the material was described as thin, metallic, foil-like, but unlike foil. It couldn't be torn or permanently creased. You could crumple it into a ball and let go, and it would return to its original shape. No visible distress, no sign of panic. Witnesses described him as quiet, distracted, or focused on something no one else noticed. Then they step into the water, sometimes fully clothed, sometimes after removing their shoes and setting them aside neatly. But occasionally, there are details that stand out. Family members report that the person had mentioned hearing something unusual near the shoreline days earlier. A humming, a voice that seemed closer than it should have been. But what stands out in certain reports is the interpretation. Some individuals describe the sound as patterned, almost melodic. Others say it's felt as if it was directed at them. On paper, the explanation sounded reasonable, but when families began laying the timeline side by side, their stories started to unravel. One of the most troubling aspects of how sudden disappearances were. Excuse me, I totally misread that sentence. One of the most troubling aspects was how sudden people disappeared. These weren't long wilderness expeditions gone wrong, and in many cases, individuals were only supposed to be gone a few minutes. By the early 2000s, Nome had earned a grim reputation for unexplained vanishings. Some researchers later noted that per capita, the missing persons rate in that region was shockingly high compared to most parts of the United States. Yet some cases faded quietly into cold files. No dramatic press conferences, no breakthroughs, just families left without answers. What made everything worse was the paralysis cases often lined up with the disappearances. Someone would report repeated nighttime encounters days or weeks before, and later they would vanish or be found dead far from town. Welcome back, friends. Hello. Pooh, well, I did not poo. Thank you very much. Jeez, Monty. Jeez. Pee-pee times are not always poopy times. But poopy times are always pee-pee times. I'm just saying. Just saying. Monty, you haven't met Jack yet. This is Jack. Jack is my skeleton friend. And Jack has a piece of vocal software from the 1990s to make him talk.
Hello, Manaimu.
Yeah, that's how he says Manamu. This is Jack. Jack is my buddy. Jack usually lives in the yard. But I actually have a really good picture of Jack in the middle of winter, sitting in my yard, covered in like 3 inches of snow. But it was such a cool picture because the snow melted like 4 or 5 hours later. And it was weird to get so much snow so quickly. Monty, do you remember being tested for the GATE program when you were a child? I know I'm pretty sure you're in Australia. Was there anything like that in your elementary school where you tested for something similar to the GATE program, the Gifted and Talented Education Program? This was a prevalent program in the United States. I'm just curious to see if this has reach elsewhere in other countries. I'm sure there are. Just curious, that's all. Baby times, poopy times. Okay. Okay. Are y'all ready to get into Act 3? I'm ready to finish this beer. I want my face to feel fuzzy. And while I'm thinking about it, we hit 400 subscribers on YouTube this week. So thank you to everybody on YouTube that thank you to everybody that subscribed on YouTube. We hit 400. We're at like 402 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much to everybody on YouTube lands. YouTube is our big platform. That's where we get our most traction from. So I'm glad that a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't watching the long form videos. They have to wait for the shorts to come through, but that's just the way it is. Oh gosh, we're dropping frames like a bad habit. What's going on here? Anybody watching, does the stream look okay? Am I a little choppy? I don't have anything to... Yeesh. Why did the stream get so shitty all of a sudden? I don't know why the network is clogged up, I guess, right now. It's just, I don't know. It's about time for me to build a new computer because I feel like my desktop is just in horrible condition. I guess I guess while it's doing its thing, I'm gonna pull it up on my phone. I'm just curious what it looks like. Because if it looks fine, I'm just going to keep going. Okay. Yeah, we're leveling back out. Oh, look, we're green now. Okay. Yeah. Never mind. Sorry about that. Yeah. Looks like we're doing fine. We dropped 14% of frames. Oof. Alrighty. Well, let's get into Act 3, everybody. This is Act 3, everybody. Act 3, the theories.
It's buffered a few times for me, but assumed it is my end.
Yeah, I don't know what's been going on here lately. I noticed all weekend been getting some buffering issues. I dropped 14.3% of frames.
Yeah, I'm looking to get a working PC also.
Yeah, the one I'm using is, I built it myself, but it's shit, almost 10 years old. I mean, I'm running a Ryzen 5 in it, and I do a lot of multitasking here at the desktop when it comes to the podcast. Every single USB port is occupied. I would really like to upgrade. That was my plan. I spent a lot of money on this computer about 10 years ago, and it has worked fantastically. It's still working pretty good. However, every now and again, the Ethernet port just stops reading, and I have to use like a USB-C hub to make the Ethernet work. I know it's just a matter of time before my motherboard completely fails. And I just don't want to scramble to be able to do the podcast on a weekend. So I've been kind of holding out. Like, I want to build one, but I really don't want to spend $2,000 on what I want to build. I'm really, really hoping these RAM prices are going to go down. $500 for 16 gigs of RAM is ridiculous when it cost less than $100 a few years ago. I don't know. I have a hard time swallowing that pill. But now they're saying, like, there's going to be a CPU shortage. I don't know. Jeez. Monty, what are you planning on building? I'm curious. What are you? Are you, Monty, are you an AMD or Intel? This is this is the question of all questions. I am AMD all the way. I don't know what it is. I've never liked Intel. Uh it's just in order to upgrade the motherboard to the bigger processor that I want, I have to change the socket, which changes the motherboard, which changes my RAM. And so at that point, I'm buying everything new again. I guess I could reuse the case, but you know, if I'm going to spend all that money, I'm going to go ahead and buy a case that I like. Geez, I've got like Overwatch stickers on it from like 10 years ago, back when Overwatch was good. But yeah, I'm hoping, like I almost pulled a trigger on a desktop over the weekend, and fortunately cooler heads prevailed and I didn't go out and spend $2,000, but you know, that's the way it goes. All right. Well, folks, let's get into Act 3. This is the theories. Act 3, everybody. Act 3. So up to this point, everything we've talked about lives in a space that can be explained. Educational programs, inconsistent implementation, childhood memories shaped by confusion and lack of context. And that all tracks. But the moment you take those shared experiences and start asking why they feel so similar across so many people, that's when the theories start. Because for a lot of former GATE students, the official explanation doesn't feel complete. It explains what happened. It doesn't explain how it felt. And when people go looking for something that doesn't explain that feeling, they don't end up in educational journals. They end up in places where the answers get a lot more uncomfortable. And one of the most common theories, and easily the most controversial, is the idea that the GATE program wasn't just an educational program. It was a selection process, not for better classes, but for something else entirely. The claim is that the GATE program wasn't just identifying intelligent children, it was identifying specific types of minds. Kids who showed unusual pattern recognition, heightened intuition, or the ability to process information in ways that didn't fit the standard testing. Not just smart, but different. And once you go down that path, the theory starts to connect to something real, something documented, something that gives it just enough weight to feel possible. And this is the point where people start to bring up something we talked about in season 1. And that thing is MK Ultra. Now, to be clear, MK Ultra was real. It involved psychological experiments, behavior manipulation, and testing methods that, in many cases, were done without consent. And that's not speculation, it's documented history. So when people connect it to GATE, they're not starting from nothing. They're pointing to a precedent. And the leap comes in the timing. MK Ultra officially ended in the early 1970s, the same period when GATE programs were expanding across the country. And for some, that overlap raises questions. If the program ended, did the research actually stop? Or did it just move somewhere less visible? Like schools? And that's where the details from Act 2 start to get reinterpreted. Because once you look at those experiences through that lens, they start to feel different. Some accounts get very specific. Former students describe being shown flashcards, symbols, shapes, abstract images, and being asked not just what they saw, but what they felt or associated with them. Or remember an adult entering the room with what they describe as a briefcase or a box, removing materials one at a time, almost like a controlled session instead of a classroom activity. And then there's another detail that shows up more often than you'd expect. Headphones. A great number of people recall being given headphones during these sessions, listening to tones, words, or audio that didn't seem connected to anything they were learning. And in some cases, they were asked to describe what they heard. In others, what they felt while listening. Now here's the important part. There's no official documentation of any of this part of the standardized GATE curriculum. Not the flashcards, not the briefcase, not the audio testing, and not everyone who went through GATE remembers anything like this. But the fact that these details show up at all, across different people, different places, different time periods, is exactly what fuels this theory. Because when you take into account abstract visual testing, controlled environments, audio-based tasks, and strong sense of observation, it starts to resemble something like a classroom. Or something less like a classroom, and more like a series of controlled evaluations. And that's where the theory branches again. Some believe these weren't just intelligent tests. They were attempts to identify cognitive traits linked to things like remote viewing, the ability to perceive or describe things without direct sensory input. Now again, this sounds like science fiction, but the idea itself isn't entirely fictional. The United States government did explore remote viewing during the Cold War through programs like Stargate. Hey, there you go, world's confusing. We're going to talk about Stargate tonight. Yeah, Project Stargate. Go down that rabbit hole all you want. The U.S. government did document this. It is real. So the theory builds. And if the government had an interest in non-traditional cognition, and if they needed individuals with specific mental traits, then a nationwide program designed to identify unique thinkers would be a convenient place to look. And then there's another direction this goes. The indigo children idea. All right, we're getting deep. Here we go. Hold on. I'm going to borrow this, Jack. Shit's getting deep. Get your tinfoil hats on, everybody. Get them on. I know you've got one handy. And if you don't, go to the kitchen right now. Grab tinfoil. Wrap it around your head. Block those incoming signals from the government. Because they're listening. They are listening. And they're listening to this. Because what we're about to talk about. The indigo children. This theory suggests that some children are born with heightened awareness, stronger intuition, and a natural resistance to traditional systems. Not just gifted, but fundamentally different. And within that framework, GATE wasn't just identifying smart kids, it was identifying those specific individuals, whether intentionally or not. And the testing? The isolation, the strange environments, some interpret that as an attempt to understand or even suppress those traits. Now, at this point, we've clearly moved beyond anything you can verify, but that doesn't stop the theory from feeling compelling. Because it's built on something real, a shared experience that people still don't fully understand. And then there's one more version of this idea that's been gaining traction lately. The idea that GATE wasn't about training or experimentation at all. That it was about tracking. So this version suggests that once certain students were identified, they weren't necessarily tested further. They were noted, cataloged, possibly followed in ways that wouldn't be obvious, and then ignored. However, there is no evidence for that, no documents and no confirmation, but the theory exists for a simple reason. people feel like they were selected for something and never told what that something was. And that's the common thread through all of this. These theories don't come from hard proof. They come from trying to explain a shared experience that doesn't feel fully accounted for. Because when enough people say, quote, something about that didn't feel like school, at some point, people stop asking if it was strange and start asking why. And that's the line we're standing on right now. Because in Act 4, to break all of this down, what holds up, what doesn't, and why something that may have been completely normal ended up feeling like something else entirely. All right. So I gave you part of my story at the beginning. I'm going to give you the rest of it. I'm going to tell you what I went through. So I will say, pieces of this F was able to corroborate. He says, I remember them doing some of this testing. I remember it. And so I said, do you remember the hearing test? It's like, do you remember putting on the headphones? He said, oh, I kind of remember something. And then I said, well, do you remember them setting down like a big briefcase, but not them showing you what's inside it? He said, oh, well, I kind of remember something. Then I said, do you remember flashcards? He's like, what do you mean by flashcards? I was like, do you remember them showing you the back of a card? And you had to guess what was on the other side. He said, I remember something about cards. I don't remember exactly what it was. So at this point, I knew I was onto something because when I was young, I remember all of these things. So here's my full story. Or why I may or may not have been selected for the G.A.T.E program or to be monitored by the United States government for something I may or may not have been privy to. I don't know. So I remember being in class and hearing, I guess it was the principal or whoever worked at the front desk that day, reading off a list of names. And I mean, there had to have been 50 of us, maybe more. I don't remember. Anyway, we go down this weird narrow hallway. We go into the gym and then circle around the gym and then back out down the hallway we went to, which was where this guy that, like, I can't remember his face. All I remember seeing was his hands, which is weird for me because I've got a brain for faces. I'm horrible with names, but I can remember faces. Like in elementary school, I can remember what my kindergarten teacher's face looks like. I can remember what my gym teacher's face looked like. I had one teacher that fucking hated me because he would take all my toys that I brought to school, and he would constantly taunt me about the toys that he took from me that he was holding on to. I remember his face. But for some reason, the day we were called out of class and we had to make that big circle around the gym and go single file with our hands straight at our sides at attention, practically at attention, silent, waiting for your turn at the desk with the guy with the briefcase, I cannot, for the life of me, remember his face. All I remember is his hands. So I remember feeling how strange it was. All right. That it was just very strange. I was never called out of class for anything at any point in time. I was not a problem child. I didn't get in trouble. So I was called out of class, and honestly, I was excited, right? You get out of school, you get out of class. So I'm called out. I remember I was towards the front of the line. So So my last name starts with a B. So I think there was only like 3 or 4 people in front of me. But I remember coming down my hallway and seeing, like, going down the hall and seeing people come down the stairs at the same time I was walking down the hallway. And I go in and they say, well, here, form a single file line. We don't, put your hands flat at your sides. We don't want anybody playing around. I want to make sure that everybody's quiet. That was the thing. They're like, we've got to make sure that you're quiet. So we were, a lot of us were actually kind of scared because when they tell you to be quiet, that's a little concerning, right? I mean, we're children, we're kids. So I remember watching the 3 or 4 people that were in front of me do their thing. And I remember them like trying to listen to their responses because I wanted to give that response. I was like, I've got to have the right answer. Whatever this is some kind of test. And I've got to figure out why, or I've got to figure out how to answer these questions correctly. Oh, wow. I was just straight up kicked out of one of my streaming platforms. Yeah, it won't even let me log in. Wow. But yeah, I remember feeling like I was in trouble. And weird. We'll come back to that, I guess. Let me stop streaming there. It's a little weird. But I remember like watching the kid in front of me and listening to his answers and trying to memorize them because I wanted to be able to give the right answer to whatever test we were about to be given. It was clear after standing in line for 20, 30 minutes that we were being tested for something. And by the time I made it up there, I noticed the headphones first. So my family growing up was a very music-centered family. And we had good sound equipment at my house. And I remember seeing the headphones and saying to myself that these are a little dated, but they're really good headphones. Really good headphones. I remember them being green, like dark green and stainless steel. And then there was like a phone cord cable attached to the side. So like this cable in my headset is straight. But when I say phone cord, like it coiled. Like, hold on. I actually was shopping for some vintage headphones just the other day. Let's see if those are still in my cart. They are. Check this out. So these are very similar to what I remember. Very similar. Like the textured green, hard shell. I remember the knob on the side. And the cord was like a phone cord. So he handed me the headphones. And I watched him like take the cord, plug it into something. And at first I was like, oh, it's a hearing test. And so he says, raise your hand when you hear the sound. This is a hearing test. I said, okay. So I do the hearing test and I raise my hand, do my thing, hear a tone, raise my hand. And he's like, raise your hand on the right if you hear it in the right ear. Raise your hand on the left if you hear it in the left ear. So I do it. But then I remember at one point, he was like, do you still hear the sound? I said, yes. He said, which ear? So I held up my right hand. He's like, do you hear the sound now? And I said, yes. And I held up my right hand because it was in my right ear. And then he says, how does this sound make you feel? And he played a sound in the left ear that was at such a strange frequency that it felt like it was vibrating my head. Like you hear that certain frequency of sound that it was just womp, 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 womp. But it made like my whole head kind of vibrate. I said, and I remember like grabbing both ears and like lifting the headset off. I was like, yeah, I hear that. I was like, it's really uncomfortable. And he said, okay, you can take the headset off. So I take off the headset and I set it on the desk. And I remember him taking the headset, unplugging the cable, putting it in his briefcase, which is still got the lid open to me. And he held up a playing card. And the card that he showed me was the back of the card. And he flipped it one time, and there was a square. And he flipped it back to me. He said, I'm going to show you a card. Tell me what you think is on it. So he put the card back down, pulled up two cards, pulled one out, and showed me the back. He says, what's on the card? And I remember just being confused, like panicking a little bit. I'm like, what's the right answer? What answer is he looking for? So I said like square, because that's what he showed me earlier. And he says, okay. So he puts it back with the other two, goes back behind the briefcase, comes up with two more cards, pulls one out. What's on this card? I said, well, I don't know. Can't see it. He said, okay. Puts it back with the two cards, goes back behind the briefcase. Pulls up a single card. What's on this card? Well, I don't know. Can't see it. Okay. And he puts it back in the briefcase, closes the briefcase, click, click, snap, locks the briefcase. We're done here. And so I got up from the desk and I started walking away, and he says, just go back to class. Well, that year, I was moved up a grade. I was 16 the beginning of my senior year, and I graduated 2 months after I turned 17. So I was pushed ahead a grade, and it made me graduate early. So my senior year in high school, I had nothing to do. I was bored. They said, well, your credits, they're like, something with your credits doesn't line up correctly. We don't know why. And so my senior year, I just walked around the school all day long at school. I don't know why my credits didn't line up correctly, but like, you're just going to graduate everybody else, but you're going to graduate a year early. So I don't know if that had something to do with the GATE program or not, because I was immediately elevated a year. I went from the class I was in to the class that's supposed to be the following year. But I will remember this until the day I die. I will never forget this experience. They could try to brainwash me all they want, but it ain't gonna happen. I've got protection. They're not gonna get me. They're not gonna get me. All right, so enough rambling. Enough of my stories, my crazy stories from when I was a child. Are y'all ready to get into Act 4? We're gonna break it down. We're gonna break this thing down. We're gonna pick apart this information. Oh, you're ready for Act 4? Because I know I am. Jack? Jack, are you ready? Are you ready for Act 4?
I am ready, let's do this.
All right, Jack. Let's get going. So this is Act 4, everybody. Act 4. Breaking it all down. So by the time you get to this point in the story, it's easy to feel like something must have been going on. You've got thousands of similar accounts, a real history of government experimentation, documented interest in psychic research, and a program that, at least on the surface, doesn't fully explain how people remember it. And that combination, it's enough to make anyone stop and think. But this is the part of the episode where we do what this show is built on. We stop leaning into the mystery and start pulling it apart. Because if there is something more to the GATE program, it should hold up under pressure. And if it doesn't, then we need to understand why it feels like it does anyway. So let's start with the biggest piece of this, memory. Everything we've talked about so far, every shared experience, every strange detail comes from memory. Not records, not documentation, but memory. And memory is not as reliable as people think. Over time, the brain doesn't just store experiences, it reshapes them. Details fade, emotions stay. And when you revisit those memories years later, especially after hearing someone else describe something similar, your brain starts to fill in the gaps. Not intentionally, but naturally. So when someone says, I remember being taken out of class and given strange tests, that might be accurate, but when they add, it felt like I was being studied. That interpretation layered on top of the memory now multiplies that across 1,000 people and introduce something else. The internet. Most of these GATE conversations didn't start in the 80s or 90s, they started recently. On forums, social media, on video platforms where people can compare experiences in real time. And once those patterns start to emerge, they don't just stay patterns, they get reinforced. So we actually had somebody post, quote, "Did anyone else in GATE feel like the tests were weird?" End quote. And suddenly you've got hundreds of responses saying, "Yeah, I thought it was just me." Or, "I'm not sure." Now here's the important part. Those people aren't lying. They're connecting. But in the process of connecting, something subtle happens. The memories start aligning. Not because they're false, but because they're being reinterpreted through a shared lens. And once that lens includes the ideas that government experiments or psychic testing, it changes how those memories are understood. So what used to be, that was a strange class I didn't understand, becomes, that might have been something else entirely. And that shift is powerful. So what about the strange tests? Let's bring it back to something concrete. The tests themselves, because this is where a lot of the theories gain traction. Abstract puzzles, open-ended questions, symbol recognition, observation-based evaluation. On the surface, that sounds unusual, but in the context of educational psychology, it's not. During the exact time period GATE programs were expanding, there was a major shift in how intelligence was measured. Educators were moving away from simple memorization and toward how students think. Not just, can you get the answer right, but how did you arrive at it? And that led to testing methods that looked different. Instead of multiple choice, right versus wrong answers, you get pattern recognition and logical reasoning without clear endpoints and creative interpretation, which to a child would feel confusing and unstructured, even a little unsettling. But to the educator, it's just cognitive assessment. So then there's the feeling of being watched. And then this one comes up a lot. And it sounds intense, but students did describe being observed closely and evaluated, sometimes without much interaction. But again, there's grounded explanation. Behavioral observation is a standard part of advanced education programs, especially for younger students. Teachers aren't just looking for answers, they're watching how students approach problems, how they react to the difficult questions, and how they think under pressure. And that means less instruction and more observation, which to a kid sitting in a quiet room with adults watching can feel like something a lot bigger. So now let's zoom out just a little bit, because this is where everything comes together. Humans are wired to find the patterns, even when they're not there. If enough people share similar environments, similar age ranges, and similar types of testing, then their experiences are going to overlap. That doesn't mean they were part of a coordinated program, it means they were part of similar systems. But when those overlapping experiences get revisited years later and placed next to ideas like MKUltra or remote viewing, the pattern starts to feel like something intentional, even if it wasn't. So what holds up? It's a great question. Now let's be direct. G.A.T.E program was real. It involved non-traditional testing methods. It varied widely between districts. Some students had confusing or isolating experiences. But what doesn't have evidence? The psychic testing programs, government tracking of students, direct connections to classified experiments. There's no documentation, no verified sources, no proof, just connections, interpretations, and a shared sense that something felt off. You got to be asking yourself, why does it feel so real? Because it was real. The experience was real. The confusion was real. The lack of explanation was real. And when you combine that with time, memory, and the need to understand something that never quite made sense, you get a story that feels bigger than it actually is. Not fake, not fabricated, but expanded. And that brings us to the final piece of this. Because even if the conspiracy doesn't hold up, the question still does. Why do so many people walk away from the same program, feeling like they were part of something they couldn't explain? And that's where we end this. Because in Act 5, we're not just asking what G.A.T.E was, we're asking why it still sticks with people decades later. Why, indeed. That was a lot to take in. I hope y'all had your tinfoil hats on the whole time. I really do. I really do. It's a lot. So I'm starting to lean a certain direction. I'm not going to say which side I'm leaning towards yet, but I think I'm starting to form concept, an idea. And I hope all of you listening are forming a concept too, because we've got only one act left. and we're going to break the whole thing down. We're going to look at every single piece of evidence. We're going to wrap this thing up in a nice, neat little bow. And I hope you all have your tinfoil hats on. I know I've got mine on. I've got mine on. All right. Yeah, so I'm forming an opinion about what I think I went through based on some of the evidence tonight and based on my personal experiences. And when we reach the end of Act 5, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm thinking. I'm going to tell you all about it. I hope y'all are typing your responses furiously. Keep in mind, we do have some new redemptions down here if you're watching on Twitch tonight. We do have some new redemptions, paranormal, not paranormal. We also have the olive oil drum and bass. And do you believe 4 new redemptions tonight? But most importantly, we do have the paranormal, not paranormal. I should probably make that just 1 point to be able to pop those. So if at any point you decide whether tonight's investigation is paranormal or not paranormal, you're welcome to pop that redemption and let me know what you think. Yeah, I spent some serious time working on these damn redemptions. I'm gonna pop a couple of them. Here we go. Here's the new one. Here's one of them.
Do you believe in me? Because I believe in you.
Mothman believes in you. And just for funsies, we're gonna do the olive oil drum and bass. We've been talking about this one for a while now. Because we have the basil bass drop.
Basil bass drop.
Well, we had to go on and do one for my cat. So we also have the olive oil drum and bass.
But surely you mean au revoir? No. Goodbye.
Olive oil drum and bass!
Yeah, sorry. I have fun with these. I have a lot of fun with them. All right, kids. Well, let's get into Act 5. We're gonna tie this up into a nice, neat little bow. We're gonna come to a conclusion, whether or not the GATE program was truly for gifted individuals, or was the government doing something they weren't supposed to? All right, well, let's get into Act 5, everybody. This is Act 5. So what was it? At this point, we've looked at both sides of the story. The official version, structured, documented, grounded in education, and the unofficial version, shared memories, strange experiences, and the theories that push into something much darker. And if we're being honest, neither side fully cancels out the other. Because here's the reality. There's no evidence that the GATE program was a secret government experiment. No documents, no whistleblowers, no verifiable connection to anything like MKUltra continued through schools, if that existed. We'd expected to see something, and we don't. But at the same time, there's also no clean explanation for why so many people remember it the way they do. Not just it was different, but it felt off. And that's where this gets interesting. Because when something leaves that kind of impression across thousands of people, across decades, it means something did happen. Just maybe not what people think. So what's the most likely answer here? The simplest explanation is usually the right one. Okay? And in this case, the explanation is a combination of things. It's experimental education methods. It's inconsistent implementation across schools, the lack of communication with students, and the way childhood experiences get processed over time. So you put all that together and you get a situation where kids were pulled out of class without understanding why. They were placed in unfamiliar environments. They were given tasks that didn't feel like normal schoolwork, and no one really explained what was happening. That alone is enough to create a lasting impression. Now fast forward 20, 30, even 40 years. Those same kids are adults. They look back on those experiences with a completely different perspective, and they start asking questions they didn't have the context to ask at the time. What were those tests really for? Why didn't anyone explain it? And why did it feel so different from everything else? And those questions don't have clear answers. People start filling in the gaps by themselves. So why did the conspiracy stick? Because this isn't about G.A.T.E. It's about something bigger. It's about trust. Programs like this ask people, especially kids, to participate without fully understanding what's happening. And when there's no transparency, even harmless things can feel suspicious. Now add in a real history of government secrecy, add in things like MK Ultra, which proved that experimentation did happen without consent, and suddenly the idea that something else could have been happening doesn't feel impossible, does it? Even if there's no evidence. So what was the G.A.T.E program? Most likely, exactly what it claimed to be. An educational initiative designed to challenge gifted students. But here's the part that matters. Just because something is explained doesn't mean it was experienced clearly. And that gap between explanation and experience is where stories like this are born. Not out of lies, but out of delusion. But out of a need to make sense of something that never fully made sense in the first place. Because at the end of the day, the G.A.T.E program didn't leave people with answers. It left them with questions. And when enough people are left asking the same question, at some point you have to at least consider why, right? Maybe it was just a product of its time. An education system experimenting with new ideas without thinking how they'd be remembered later. Or maybe there's a reason those experiences still don't sit right with people who live through them. No matter which side you land on, one thing is clear. This wasn't just another class. It was something people remember. And more importantly, something they never fully understood. So we've done it. We've made it through 5 acts. We've done it. We did it. We did it. Round of applause for everybody who stuck with me all this time. That was quite a ramble. I know that was a lot. I know it was. I'm curious. Anybody listening tonight? Anybody live in chat? Have you experienced anything like this? Do you remember the headphones? Do you remember the briefcase? Do you remember the flashcards? The weird being pulled out of class thing? I want to know. I mean, I legitimately want to know because I remember these things. I've formed an idea, a concept of what I experienced. And I'm curious what everybody else went through, if they experienced anything like it. Geez, I wish Hazel was here. She would have surely she would have some grounding concept, something to talk about that contradicted contradicted what was in my mind right now. Because I think you know where we're leaning. Yell.
I buy it TBH. We know they took Psi seriously for years and continue to do so. We know there were programs that looked at it. We know there was a particular focus on kids. So makes sense they would survey the population. What is unclear is if it would have led to something if the kid displayed ability. Maybe it was just a survey.
All right. I'm with you, Blip. I'm with you. And I think that's what I think that's part of what I experienced. I think that something in my early education triggered them to say, we should look at this guy. We should test him further because there's something different about him. I'm not claiming to be like a super intelligent person. I mean, I pick things up quickly. I've got a mechanical minded brain. There's not much I can't learn. Not much I can't. You give me, if you say, hey, we'll give you $100,000 a year if you learn this, shit, I'm going to learn it. And I'll pick it up and it's ingrained in me. Taught myself sign language. I taught myself German because I just wanted to learn it. I was back in middle school, high school. I excelled as an athlete. I was all of those things. I was an exemplary student. When I graduated, I had a 4.0. I didn't do anything with my life. I don't claim to have psychic abilities or anything. However, I did go through their screening process. I do believe this. However, maybe I didn't give them the answers they were looking for. I couldn't see what was on the other side of the card. So they just passed me off, sent me back to class. I was never technically part of the GATE program. However, I was elevated in my education. I was moved up a year. I do believe that there was a program there. And history tells us when the MK Ultra program ended was right about the time that the GATE program started. Isn't that a little coincidental? Like maybe they still wanted to kind of test the waters. They maybe they were weeding it out. Like I don't remember like somebody going up and being asked what's on the other side of the card and them disappearing. I don't remember any of that. But I will say it's really strange that I don't remember the face of the guy who did the test. Because I remember everybody's faces. I'm a face guy. I remember faces. If I can remember faces from that time in my life, why can't I remember the face? All I remember is the desk, the briefcase, the hands, the headphones, the cards. That's it. Like a fog of war around it. I just can't picture the face. It's a little weird to me. I definitely think there was a program. I definitely think that they were testing the waters to find gifted, literally, like they said in the name of the acronym for GATE, they're trying to find gifted individuals. And I think that spectrum, the gifted individuals, are kids with latent psychic abilities. Because wouldn't that be the ultimate it's the ultimate poker hand. You have all of the cards, you're holding all of the chips. You're able to remote view. You're able to see into countries where you can't see. Remote viewing is a fantastic subject. We've never covered it on the podcast, but I would like to. And maybe in the future, maybe not next week, but we will cover remote viewing and we'll probably touch on this a little bit. But I do feel like that this was like a filtering program to find those younger individuals that may or may not have showed promise that could have been funneled into government programs. Now, with my limited point of view, I don't remember anybody disappearing. I don't remember anybody necessarily passing the test, but nobody failed.
It doesn't even have to be what G.A.T.E was for. Could just be that Psi was included in the battery of tests amongst a more mundane program.
I agree. It was a little weird. Looking back on it, I understand now today what they were doing. They were testing my Psi abilities. I don't have Psi abilities. No wonder why they just sent me back to class. Anybody holds up a card and says, what card am I holding? They're obviously testing if you have latent psychic abilities. Obviously. I mean, you watch any number of science fiction movies, this comes up. This happens. So I'm going to say, and anybody watching live can pop the redemption in Twitch, whether they think this is paranormal or not. I'm going to say that this is paranormal. You know, not necessarily like ghostly paranormal or anything, but this is a legitimate case. Like we're dealing. Yeah, here, let me do it. Hold on. Paranormal. I'll even do the redemption. I'll do it. I'll do it because I spend so much time on this.
That is absolutely paranormal.
Yeah. There's something sketchy going on here. Absolutely. And I don't know, if Hazel was here, she would probably have something to say. We'll get her input next week. But yeah, we're definitely dealing with something a little strange here. I like my fingers on the pulse, but I can't quite figure out exactly what we're dealing with. But it made for a really interesting case. And it lends a little bit to the authenticity because I was physically a part of it. I wasn't selected, but I went through the selection process. I seen it.
That is absolutely paranormal.
Hey, see how easy that is now? Thanks, Blip. So now everybody can interact and say whether this is paranormal or not. Oh, geez. So I guess the next question is, Jack, what do you think? Do you think that we're dealing with something legitimately paranormal?
Absolutely. This is real.
Okay. Hold on. I'm typing his response. Yep. Mm-hmm.
The government is hiding things from us and they are looking for kids with psychic abilities.
Yep. You're absolutely right, Jack. You're absolutely right. Here. You need the tinfoil hat more than I do. You can have that back. There you go. Protect your tiny skeletal brain. All right. Well, we've decided. The G.A.T.E program was legitimately paranormal, for the lack of a better word. What a fantastic episode. What a fantastic set of research. This is one of the few cases, very, very few cases that I can say I was a part of. I mean, almost by proxy, but I was there. They tested me. I failed horribly, but they tested me, right? It's real. I can't deny it. You can't challenge my own memory. I was there. It's just really strange. It's a really strange set of circumstances, and I think we're legitimately dealing with something that's, I wouldn't say paranormal, but we're dealing with something in the realm of conspiracy theory here. The government was definitely testing children, and they were definitely looking for something, and I feel personally, based on tonight's evidence, that the government was looking for children with latent psychic abilities. Simple as that. Simple as that.
We need worlds to balance it out, but looks like they're dreaming about your living room again.
Yeah, Worlds, if you're there, come on back and we got 2 votes for yes. Anybody else, you're welcome to chime in. Whether you think the whether you think the government was actually testing children to see if they had psychic abilities, or was it just them looking for gifted children? Because I don't know anybody in my massive school that I was in that was in a program that was like, here, we're going to shift you from your class and put you in a different class to learn better ish, learn gooder. I don't know. I don't freaking know. I'm a simple podcaster that just happened to be there. All right, kids. Well, let's go ahead and bust this closing monologue. We're going to get the hell out of here. I think Hef is streaming. Let's see if we got somebody we can raid. We haven't raided anybody in a little while. Oh yeah.
Margarita.
Oh goodness. We're gonna raid Hef. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna raid Hef at the end of this. Pop in there, let Hef know that you're definitely on the side of the paranormal and the believing. Hold on just a second. It's so complicated to raid somebody. Jesus. I just want to click raid. All right, everybody. Well, let's get into this closing monologue. Thanks, everybody, for being here tonight. If anybody listening out there has been part of the gifted and talented education program, G.A.T.E program, but you dealt with some things that were a little suspicious, anything that you heard in the evidence tonight, feel free to email me at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. You can email me, or you can, if you've got an idea for a future episode, questions, comments, anything, feel free to let me know. You can email me at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from everybody. Let me know if you're doing good. Let us know if we're doing bad. There's only 2 of us. Hazel's not here tonight. Hazel will be here next week, and we will have an all-new episode for you next week. I'm not sure what we're going to cover next week. I think we're about due for a good cryptid. Yeah, I think we're going to do a cryptid next week. It might be something a little silly because we've covered all the big ones. And, I mean, it's not like we're getting new cryptids every other week, but I think we need to do a good cryptid next week. So, all right, let's get into the closing monologue. And again, let me give some quick shout outs. Blip, thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate your sub. Thanks for being here. Thanks for participating. World's Confusion, I know you're probably sleeping, and I hope this commentary seeps into your brain while you're sleeping and twists your dreams. If I go downstairs after I get off here and you're sitting on my couch, we're going to have something to talk about next week. Thanks to Jack for being here tonight, covering for Hazel tonight. Hazel will be here next week, and we'll have a fantastic new episode to cover. We're going to probably cover something cryptid related. I don't know which one we're going to cover yet, but we're going to cover something. And prepare yourselves, because here in a couple weeks we hit our 100th episode. We've come a very, very long way, and I'm so very glad that all of you have kept with me for all these years. We're going to have a blast. We're going to go through, and here in a couple weeks we're going to recover the first episode that we've ever covered on the podcast, which is one of my favorite subjects, the Phoenix Lights. So get ready for a really interesting reinvestigation of our first episode here in a couple weeks. Get ready. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. Thanks again, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you, Blip. Thank you, James Cappy from YouTube. Thanks you, all of you on YouTube that watched tonight. Thanks you, World of Confusion, for your thanks for popping that.
Sweet Dreams World.
Thanks for popping that new redemption as soon as you came in tonight. Let's hit this closing monologue and let's get the hell out of here. Give Hef a follow if you guys haven't followed him already. Let's wrap this thing up. All right. So some stories come with clear answers. This isn't one of them. The GATE program exists on paper, a straightforward idea. Identifying gifted students, give them better opportunities, help them reach their potential. And for many, that's exactly what it was. But for others, it's something else, and it's something they still think about. Not because they believe they were part of a secret experiment, because something else about it never quite added up. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Not that there was something hidden, but that there was something unexplained. And sometimes that's all it takes for a story to stick around, to evolve, to turn into something bigger than it started from. So whether this was just an education program that didn't communicate well, or something that left more questions than answers on purpose, that part we may never know. But what we do know is this. When thousands of people remember the same feeling, it's worth paying attention to. So if you find yourself in a classroom, outside of your normal settings, and they're showing you the backs of class cards.
Have a nice week, bud.
Thanks, buddy. Greg, glad you came tonight, bud. Thanks again. You're one of the best. You're one of the best. You're one of the best, Blip. You get an MLG. So if you find yourself in a classroom, an unusual location, a place you don't recognize, and they're showing you the backs of flashcards, guess square, guess star, guess triangle, guess anything. Don't say I don't know, because they might let you in. Or they might push you out like they did me. But whatever you do, make sure you follow us beyond the shadows. Good night, everybody.
Creature like that, I would never die.
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.